In the beginning there was only divine order. Before their rebellion, Lucifer, Beelzebub, Azazel, Leviathan, and Samael were among the highest-ranking celestial beings in heaven. Each angel had a distinct purpose within the divine hierarchy, serving the will of God and maintaining cosmic balance. According to Christian and Jewish traditions, angels were created as divine messengers and warriors, with specific roles assigned to each. The Bible and other apocryphal texts describe the celestial hierarchy in various ways, but a common understanding places angels in three main spheres. At the top were the seraphim, the closest to God, followed by the cherubim and the thrones, who guarded divine wisdom and justice. Below them were the dominions, virtues, and powers, responsible for governance and miracles. Finally, the principalities, archangels, and angels acted as intermediaries between heaven and earth. Among these ranks, 5 angels stood out for their immense power and influence, each given a crucial role in the divine order. Their brilliance, however, would ultimately lead to their downfall. Lucifer, whose name means light-bringer, was the most magnificent of all the angels. He belonged to the seraphim, the highest order of angels, who stood before the throne of God, constantly praising him with 6 wings of fire. His beauty was unparalleled, his voice like a celestial chorus, and his authority extended over countless legions of angels. Lucifer's primary role was to lead worship in heaven, directing all creation in adoration of God. Some theologians associate him with Ezekiel's description of the anointed cherub, Ezekiel 28:12-17, emphasizing his wisdom and perfect form. His radiance shone brighter than any other celestial being, earning him the title Morning Star, Isaiah 14:12. His unparalleled gifts made him the most beloved among the angels, yet also the most vulnerable to pride. As he gazed upon his own brilliance, the seeds of ambition and rebellion began to take root. Beelzebub, whose name means Lord of the Flies, was once a powerful dominion, responsible for overseeing the celestial order and harmony of heaven. In his prime, he ensured that divine laws were carried out among the angelic hosts. Unlike Lucifer, whose role was to lead worship, Beelzebub's authority was administrative, akin to a celestial steward. His wisdom was vast, and his ability to organize and command was second only to the archangels. The Book of Enoch suggests that certain high-ranking angels acted as watchers over creation, and Beelzebub may have been one of these divine overseers. Though he was not as radiant as Lucifer, his intelligence and leadership were unmatched. He was known for his meticulous nature, ensuring that every angelic duty was performed in perfect alignment with divine will. However, when Lucifer began to question God's absolute rule, Beelzebub's calculating mind entertained the possibility of change. Azazel was one of heaven's greatest warriors, a virtue responsible for teaching strength and courage to the angelic hosts. Described in apocryphal texts like the Book of Enoch, Azazel was known for bestowing knowledge of warfare, metalworking, and strategy upon both angels and later, humanity. His golden armor shimmered like the sun, and his sword cut through darkness itself. He stood alongside the archangels Michael and Gabriel in battles against chaos and disorder. His role was crucial in protecting the divine realm from external threats. Though devoted to his duty, Azazel harbored a fascination with power and knowledge. The more he learned, the more he sought, and his hunger for understanding grew into a desire for independence. When Lucifer whispered of a new order, Azazel's warrior heart was stirred, and he listened. Unlike the other angels, Leviathan had a unique position in the celestial hierarchy. Some traditions describe him as a cherub, while others believe he was a celestial beast created to guard the mysteries of the deep. His name appears in the book of Job, Job 41, as a monstrous sea creature. But before his fall, Leviathan was a divine protector of the cosmic waters. In heaven, he was not a being of destruction, but of balance. His coiled form represented the endless cycle of creation and renewal, and his presence ensured that the primordial seas remained in harmony with divine order. However, his power was vast, and he saw himself as untouchable. When whispers of rebellion reached him, he did not reject them outright. Instead, he contemplated whether the old order should be challenged. Samael was one of the most feared and revered angels in heaven. As the angel of death, he carried out divine justice, ensuring that the wicked were punished and the righteous rewarded. Unlike the other fallen angels, Samael's role remained ambiguous even after the rebellion. Some traditions view him as a fallen angel, while others see him as still serving God's will. His presence was chilling yet necessary. He was neither cruel nor merciful, but simply the executioner of divine law. With his dark robes and piercing gaze, he moved silently through the celestial realm, delivering the final decree upon those who strayed from righteousness. Yet even he was not immune to doubt. As Lucifer's influence spread, Samael pondered the meaning of justice. Was it truly divine, or merely dictated by those in power? This internal conflict would ultimately shape his decision in the rebellion to come. These 5 angels, once brilliant and revered, stood at the pinnacle of heaven's order. Each played a vital role in maintaining balance, yet each harbored a seed of doubt, ambition, or curiosity. Their divine duties were not merely functions, they were part of their very essence. Lucifer's worship, Beelzebub's order, Azazel's strength, Leviathan's guardianship, and Samael's justice defined who they were. But when the idea of rebellion was introduced, their very nature was challenged. This was not merely a war of power, it was a war of ideology. The question that burned in their minds was simple yet dangerous. Was heaven truly unchangeable? Doubt had taken root in the hearts of Lucifer, Beelzebub, Azazel, Leviathan, and Samael. Though each had served their divine purpose with loyalty, a lingering question burned in their minds. Was the order of heaven truly unchangeable? Lucifer was the first to openly voice his defiance. Standing before the other angels, he questioned the divine hierarchy. Why should they, the most powerful of all celestial beings, bow eternally before a God who ruled without opposition? Should not the greatest among them share in divinity? His words, spoken with the eloquence of heaven's greatest order, resonated deeply. Beelzebub, ever the strategist, saw the potential for a new order, one where he could rule alongside Lucifer. Azazel, warrior and teacher, envisioned a world where strength, not blind obedience, determined destiny. Leviathan, bound by duty to the seas, longed for freedom from his eternal vigil. Samael, the enforcer of divine justice, questioned whether justice itself was a construct of power rather than truth. Their whispered conversations spread like wildfire through the celestial realm. Some angels listened in secret, others openly rejected the idea, but none could ignore the shift in the air. The harmony of heaven was breaking. Not all were swayed by Lucifer's vision. The archangel Michael, the great commander of heaven's armies, was the first to stand against him. A warrior without equal, Michael's loyalty to God was unshaken. He gathered the legions of angels still faithful to the divine order and prepared for battle. "Who is like God?" he thundered, his sword igniting with divine fire. The name Michael itself meant just that, a challenge to Lucifer's claim of divinity. Gabriel, the messenger of God, warned the rebels that their path would lead only to destruction. Raphael, the healer, mourned the loss of his once brothers. Uriel, the keeper of wisdom, stood firm against deception. Despite their warnings, Lucifer and his followers did not turn back. The heavens trembled as the first battle of eternity began. The war that followed was unlike any conflict before or since. Heaven, once a realm of perfect harmony, became a battlefield of unimaginable scale. Lucifer led his legions with fiery brilliance, his once glorious wings now darkened by his own ambition. Beelzebub, the master of strategy, coordinated their movements, turning chaos into calculated strikes. Azazel, clad in his golden armor, led the charge with his mighty sword, clashing against Michael in battle after battle. Leviathan, no longer a passive guardian, became a storm of destruction, his massive form shaking the very foundations of the celestial realm. Samael, torn between loyalty and rebellion, fought with reluctance, his blades striking with hesitation. The armies of heaven met them with equal force. Michael and his warriors, empowered by divine will, pushed back against the rebels. Gabriel's trumpet sounded, shaking the firmaments. Raphael's healing light shielded the wounded. The thrones, with their burning wheels, rolled through the battlefield, their voices declaring divine judgment. The war raged for what felt like an eternity, but heaven was not a place meant for war. The very nature of the celestial realm rejected rebellion, and slowly the rebels began to falter. In the final confrontation, Michael faced Lucifer once more. Their swords clashed, sending waves of fire and light across the heavens. "You were the brightest of us all," Michael declared, sadness in his voice. "But even the brightest star cannot outshine the one who made it." With one final strike, Michael's blade shattered Lucifer's defenses. The morning star, once the greatest of all angels, fell. One by one, the rebellious angels plummeted from heaven. Beelzebub's once proud form twisted into something monstrous. Azazel's golden armor turned to rusted chains. Leviathan, screaming in fury, was cast into the depths of the abyss. Samael, shrouded in shadow, disappeared into the void. They fell for what felt like an eternity, their cries echoing across creation. Heaven sealed itself from them, and the light of the divine was forever lost to them. With the rebels cast down, peace was restored in heaven. Michael and his legions stood victorious, though their hearts were heavy. No angel rejoiced in the fall of their brethren. Lucifer and his followers landed in a realm of fire and darkness, a prison of their own making. What was once divine became damned. Thus ended the first rebellion, and thus began a new war, one that would stretch across time itself, the battle for the souls of men. As Lucifer and his fallen brethren plunged through the void, the light of heaven vanished behind them. They fell through realms unknown, their divine essence unraveling with each passing moment. The further they descended, the more their once glorious forms twisted, corrupted by their own rebellion. When they struck the bottom of the abyss, a new realm was born. Hell. It was not created by God, nor was it part of the original order of existence. It was a place shaped by the fallen themselves, formed from their pain, fury, and defiance. Lucifer rose first. His once radiant wings, now tattered and burned, stretched behind him. His golden glow had faded into a smoldering red, and his once beautiful face was now sharp with anger and sorrow. He looked around at his new domain, a land of fire, desolation, and eternal suffering. The fallen angels rose beside him, each transformed by their own sins. Beelzebub, once the master of order, had become a monstrous entity covered in swarming flies, his form bloated and diseased. Azazel, the warrior, had been shackled in chains, his once glorious armor now rusted and broken. Leviathan, who had guarded the mysteries of the sea, had mutated into a nightmarish serpent, his body coiling through the burning lakes. Samael, once the hand of divine justice, had become the angel of death, his form cloaked in eternal shadow. The light of heaven was lost to them forever. They were no longer angels. They were demons. Lucifer, now fully embracing his new identity as Satan, climbed to the highest peak of hell and proclaimed himself ruler. His voice, once the most beautiful in heaven, now thundered with fury. "This realm is ours. We may have been cast from heaven, but we will build a kingdom to rival it. We shall reign not as servants, but as gods of our own making." The fallen roared in agreement. Beelzebub, his hunger for power growing, became hell's prince, commanding the legions of lesser demons. Azazel, still a warrior at heart, became the master of forbidden knowledge, teaching mankind the arts of war and corruption. Leviathan slithered into the depths, becoming the great beast of chaos. Samael, neither fully loyal to Lucifer nor heaven, wandered the edges of existence, the bringer of death and judgment. From this throne of fire and torment, Satan plotted his ultimate revenge. He could no longer challenge heaven directly, but there was another way to strike back: mankind. When God created the world and placed humanity upon it, the fallen watched with envious eyes. Lucifer, now Satan, saw an opportunity. If he could not defeat heaven, he would steal the souls of God's beloved creation. He would turn man against his creator and drag them into the fires of damnation. The first test came in the Garden of Eden. Taking the form of a serpent, Satan whispered to Eve, tempting her to defy God's command. With a single bite of forbidden fruit, humanity's innocence was shattered. Sin entered the world, and Satan had won his first victory. From that moment, the fallen worked tirelessly to corrupt mankind. Beelzebub spread gluttony, greed, and indulgence. Azazel taught men the secrets of war, weapons, and forbidden magic. Leviathan unleashed chaos upon the seas, causing storms and destruction. Samael became the specter of death, ensuring that no mortal could escape the fate of the grave. Heaven watched in sorrow, but free will had been given to mankind. They could choose between the light and the darkness, and the fallen would ensure that darkness remained ever tempting. But all was not lost. Even as Satan and his legions worked to corrupt the world, a prophecy was spoken, one that struck fear into the heart of hell itself. A day would come when a Savior would rise, a child born of both heaven and earth. He would crush the serpent's head, break the chains of sin, and open the gates of salvation for mankind. The fallen trembled at this prophecy. They knew their time was limited. A war was coming, and in the end, even hell itself would fall. From the moment of their fall, the war between heaven and hell never ceased. It was not fought with swords and spears, but with souls, choices, and destinies. The battlefield was earth, and humanity was the prize. Angels and demons moved unseen, whispering into the minds of kings, warriors, and prophets. The fallen sought to twist the hearts of men, leading them into sin, while the loyal angels worked to protect, guide, and inspire those who sought righteousness. Lucifer, now Satan, the adversary, set himself against God's plan. He wove lies into the hearts of men, raising empires of tyranny, bloodshed, and deception. He promised power, knowledge, and pleasure to those who would forsake their Creator. The archangels, led by Michael, stood as defenders of the faithful. Time and again, Michael led the armies of heaven against the forces of darkness, ensuring that Satan's dominion would never be absolute. Beelzebub, now the prince of demons, whispered gluttony, greed, and indulgence into the hearts of rulers, turning kingdoms into dens of corruption. Azazel, the fallen warrior, taught men to craft weapons, igniting endless wars. Leviathan, the serpent of the seas, unleashed chaos upon the waters, bringing shipwrecks and destruction. Samael, the angel of death, watched over the dying, ensuring that no soul could escape the judgment that awaited them. But no matter how hard the fallen fought, the forces of heaven never wavered. The war reached its turning point when the long-awaited Messiah was born. The fallen trembled as they saw prophecy unfold. Jesus Christ, both God and man, walked the earth, teaching truth, healing the sick, and casting out demons. The forces of hell were powerless against him. Wherever he went, their influence crumbled. Satan, desperate to stop him, tried 3 temptations in the wilderness, offering power, dominion, and even the kingdoms of the world. But Christ refused them all. Then came the crucifixion. The fallen rejoiced, believing they had won, but they did not understand the divine plan. In his death, Jesus shattered the chains of sin, and when he rose from the grave, he broke the power of death itself. The gates of hell trembled. The fallen knew that their time was running out. Though the battle was lost, the war was not over. The fallen retreated, continuing to corrupt mankind. But they knew that a final reckoning was coming. The book of Revelation speaks of the last war, the day when Michael and the heavenly hosts will rise against Satan and his legions for the final battle. The armies of heaven and hell will clash, and the fallen will face their ultimate fate. Lucifer, Beelzebub, Azazel, Leviathan, and Samael will be cast into the lake of fire, their rebellion ending in eternal punishment. And at last, heaven will be victorious. The story of the fallen angels is not just one of rebellion and damnation. It is a warning. No matter how high one may rise, pride leads to ruin. No matter how powerful one may be, defiance against the Creator leads to destruction. But it is also a story of redemption. Though the fallen are beyond saving, mankind is not. Every soul has a choice: to follow the fallen into darkness or to seek the light of heaven. And in the end, light will always triumph over darkness. In the celestial realms, where the light of divine wisdom shone eternally, there existed an angel unlike any other. His name was Zephyriel, the silent watcher. Among the ranks of archangels, cherubim, and seraphim, he was a mystery, for he never spoke, never sang the praises of the Almighty as others did. Yet he stood unwavering at the edges of eternity, witnessing the unfolding of creation, his eyes filled with an understanding no other angel possessed. From the moment of his formation, Zephyriel was different. While Michael wielded his sword in divine battles, while Gabriel carried messages of great importance, And while Raphael healed those in need, Zephyriel simply watched. His presence was acknowledged, but his purpose remained unknown. Some angels whispered that he had been created for a mission so sacred that even he did not yet comprehend it. Others believed that his silence was not by choice, but by command of the Creator himself. The greatest of the celestial hosts sought to understand him. Lucifer, before his fall, once stood beside Zephyriel at the edge of the heavens, watching the stars form. "Why do you not rejoice with us?" he asked, his voice both curious and disdainful. But Zephyriel only gazed at the cosmos, his expression unreadable. It was said that even Lucifer, the brightest of angels, shuddered at that silence, for he felt that Zephyriel saw something that he himself could not. As eons passed, Zephyriel remained steadfast. He watched as Adam and Eve were formed from the dust of the earth, as humanity took its first breath. He saw the serpent whisper in the garden, the first sin unfold, and the first exile from paradise. He observed the flood that wiped the wicked from the land, the rise and fall of Babel, and the birth of nations. Still, he remained voiceless, though something in his gaze seemed to darken with each passing age. What did he know that no one else did? And why did he keep his silence? As time moved forward, the celestial realms buzzed with discussions of a prophecy, one that even the archangels did not fully understand. The throne of heaven was firm, but darkness was rising. The fallen ones, those who had sided with Lucifer in his rebellion, had begun whispering in the shadows. The war that had once torn heaven apart was long over, but the echoes of defiance remained. One day, an assembly of the highest-ranking angels was called. Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, Uriel, and the others gathered in the grand celestial hall, where light shimmered like liquid gold. A question lingered among them. What was to come? Michael, the warrior of God, was the first to speak. The balance of creation trembles once more. The fallen are restless. Darkness stirs in places where even the firmament's light struggles to reach. Gabriel, the messenger, added, "Prophets on earth have begun to receive strange visions. They see a figure standing at the edge of time, watching as the end of days approaches. But none can discern his name." All eyes turned toward Zephyriel, who stood apart from them, silent as ever. Raphael, the healer, stepped forward. "Brother, we have watched you watch the world for eons. You have seen things even we have not. Do you not have words for us now?" For a moment it seemed as if Zephyriel would answer. The light in his eyes flickered. Was it hesitation or something deeper? But he said nothing. Instead, he turned away, gazing once more toward the vastness of eternity. A shiver ran through the assembled angels. Even without words, his presence carried a weight they could not understand. And then, for the first time in creation's history, heaven trembled. The trembling of heaven was not mere coincidence. The divine halls, unshaken since the fall of Lucifer, quivered with an unknown force. The assembled angels looked upon each other with unease. Something was coming, something beyond their comprehension. A voice, deep and resounding, filled the celestial realm. It was not the voice of God, but something that had existed since the beginning of time itself. The very fabric of creation pulsed as ancient words were spoken. The Silent One knows the hour. The angels turned to Zephyriel. The prophecy was about him. Michael, the commander of heaven's armies, drew his sword, its divine fire illuminating the chamber. "Speak now, Zephyriel," he demanded. "If you know the hour, if you see the path, then let it be known." For the first time in eternity, Zephyriel's lips parted. His voice was unlike any other. It was neither loud nor soft, neither cold nor warm. It was the voice of one who had seen the past, present, and future unfold before his very eyes. The final war is not yet written in stone. The first rebellion was only a shadow of what is to come. A hush fell over the angels. What did he mean? Hadn't Lucifer's rebellion been the greatest threat heaven had ever faced? Gabriel's voice trembled. "Do you mean there will be another?" Zephyriel did not answer, but the silence itself spoke volumes. As the angels pondered Zephyriel's words, a memory long buried within the fabric of heaven stirred. There had been another rebellion, a forgotten one. Before Lucifer's fall, before the creation of mankind, there was an angel known as Sariel, the keeper of secrets. He was not cast down in fire like Lucifer, but was erased from the records of heaven. Even the angels had forgotten him, until now. Zephyriel closed his eyes and the visions returned to him as they had countless times before. He saw Sariel standing before the throne, his heart heavy with jealousy. He saw how Sariel had questioned the wisdom of God's plan to create humanity, believing that the love of the Almighty would shift away from the angels. But unlike Lucifer, Sariel had not sought war. He had sought silence, hiding in the shadows, manipulating the minds of lesser angels, whispering doubts into their ears. And then he vanished. No angel knew what had happened to him, but Zephyriel did. Sariel had not fallen to earth like Lucifer. He had not been bound like the Watchers. He had simply disappeared, slipping into the hidden layers of reality, where neither heaven nor hell could reach him. And now, after eons of silence, he was returning. A great disturbance rippled through creation. Mortals on earth felt it in their dreams. Prophets began writing visions of a faceless angel who moved between realms unseen. The fallen ones who had long awaited their chance for revenge whispered Sariel's name in the shadows. Zephyriel stood at the edge of heaven, gazing into the void where Sariel had vanished. He could feel his presence returning, like a distant storm on the horizon. But Sariel was not alone. He had gathered others, lost angels, forgotten spirits, remnants of divine beings who had been erased from history. Michael prepared the armies of heaven. "If he returns, we will face him," he declared. "Even if he is beyond our sight, the light of God will burn through the darkness." But Zephyriel knew it would not be that simple. This was not a war of swords and flames. This was a war of knowledge, a battle fought in the very fabric of existence itself. As Zephyriel watched, a figure emerge from the void, not in fire, nor in shadow, but in silence. Sariel had returned. The two angels faced each other, neither speaking, neither moving. To any other being, it would have seemed like an eternity, but for them, it was but a moment in the grand design of time. "You see what I see," Sariel finally whispered. His voice was distant, ancient. "You know what comes next." Zephyriel remained still. Sariel stepped closer. "You were given the gift of sight, but denied the right to speak. You watched as we were erased, but now the truth will be known." The air around them vibrated. The balance of existence itself was at stake. "You can stop this," Sariel said, his voice laced with something strange. Was it pleading or warning? But Zephyriel only closed his eyes, and the heavens trembled once more. As Zephyriel stood motionless, the angels of heaven felt a change in the air. The silence that followed was not one of peace, but of anticipation. Sariel turned away, and as he did, the hidden ones moved. They had been waiting just beyond the veil, their presence undetected by heaven or hell. These were the remnants of the first rebellion, spirits who had existed in the shadows for eons. Michael felt their presence before he saw them. "Prepare the hosts," he commanded. This war was written before time, and now it unfolds. And so, before the final battle between heaven and hell, before the end of days, a war unseen by mankind was about to begin. Zephyriel remained at the edge of eternity, watching as the armies prepared, as the hidden ones revealed themselves, as the forces of heaven and the forgotten rebellion stood on the brink of conflict. And then he spoke, one final time. "This is not the end." The angels around him froze. "This is only the beginning." And as he spoke, a new prophecy was born, one that would shake the foundations of existence itself. The celestial realm pulsed with tension as the forces of heaven and the forgotten rebellion stood on the brink of battle. The air shimmered with divine energy, and the very fabric of reality seemed to shift. The angels had fought wars before, but never one like this. Never against an enemy that had been erased from history itself. Sariel, standing at the head of his hidden army, gazed at heaven's defenders. His eyes, once filled with divine radiance, now burned with an otherworldly light, one that had seen beyond the veil of time. "You were blind, Michael," Sariel said, his voice like a whisper carried by the wind. "You thought the fall of Lucifer was the greatest threat, but the true war was always in the shadows." Michael did not flinch. "You seek to rewrite the will of the Almighty. That is your folly." Sariel shook his head. "I seek only truth." Lightning cracked through the heavens, and the battlefield was set. The armies of heaven stood, swords of fire drawn, while Sariel's hidden ones emerged from the depths of forgotten realms. Zephariel stood between them, silent, watching. He alone knew that this battle was not what it seemed. Something far greater was coming. As the first blow was struck, a ripple tore through the heavens. It was not the clash of steel or the sound of battle. It was something far deeper. The hidden war had begun, but it was merely a doorway. Zephariel's eyes widened as he saw what lay beyond. The veil that separated creation from the unknown had been torn. Something ancient, something that neither heaven nor hell had prepared for, stirred in the abyss. It had no name, no form, yet its presence sent waves of unease through all who stood upon the battlefield. The angels felt it. The hidden ones felt it. Even Sariel, for all his knowledge, faltered. Michael's sword burned with divine light. "What have you done?" Sariel turned, his expression unreadable. "I did not do this," he whispered. The heavens trembled. The stars dimmed. And from beyond the veil, something awoke. The war that was fought in the shadows was never about victory or defeat. It was about revelation. And as the veil between the known and the unknown broke, both angels and fallen ones realized a terrifying truth. They were never the only ones watching. The world was shrouded in darkness, a time when the heavens watched as mankind drifted further into sin. The Nephilim, the offspring of fallen angels and human women, roamed the earth, giants of great renown. They were beings of incredible strength and intelligence, but their wickedness knew no bounds. God saw the corruption spreading, and his heart was grieved. As Genesis 6:5 states, "The Lord saw how great the wickedness of the human race had become on the earth, and that every inclination of the thoughts of the human heart was only evil all the time." The presence of the Nephilim corrupted the order of creation, distorting God's design for humanity. Today we see similar corruption in our world. Violence, greed, and pride overtaking the hearts of men. Just as God sought to cleanse the world in Noah's time, we too must seek renewal through faith and righteousness. God chose Noah, a man of faith, to build an ark as a refuge for the righteous. For decades he warned the people of impending judgment, yet they laughed at him. The same is true today. Warnings of spiritual decay often fall on deaf ears. But the flood came, washing away the corruption, leaving only Noah and his family to restart humanity. This reminds us that faith and obedience bring salvation, while defiance leads to destruction. After the flood, humanity repopulated the earth, but once again, pride took hold. The people sought to build the Tower of Babel, attempting to reach the heavens and make a name for themselves. Genesis 11:4. This act of rebellion led God to confuse their language, scattering them across the world. Today, we still see the effects of human pride. Governments and societies striving for power, believing they can achieve greatness without God. The story of Sodom and Gomorrah is another warning of divine judgment. The cities were consumed by sin, and God sent angels to rescue Lot and his family before fire rained down from the sky. Genesis 19:24-25. This event reminds us that while God is patient, his justice will not be delayed forever. The sins of Sodom, pride, greed, and disregard for the needy, mirror the state of our modern world. Are we any different today? The Israelites' journey through Egypt and their eventual deliverance is another tale of divine intervention. The 10 plagues, culminating in the death of the firstborn, broke Pharaoh's resistance. God parted the Red Sea, leading his people to safety while their enemies perished. Exodus 14:21-28. This teaches us that faith leads to deliverance, and those who trust in God will be saved. Throughout history, humanity has rebelled against God, often seeking forbidden knowledge and power. The Book of Enoch describes fallen angels teaching men dark secrets, leading to further corruption. This mirrors the way technology and knowledge today can be used for good or evil. Are we drawing closer to God, or are we repeating past mistakes? One of the most mysterious biblical figures is King Nimrod, believed by some to be the first ruler to defy God openly. As a builder of Babel and a hunter before the Lord, he represents mankind's desire to control their own destiny without divine guidance. We see the same struggle today. leaders and nations rejecting God in pursuit of their own glory. Moving forward in history, we see the fall of Israel and Judah, their people taken into captivity due to their disobedience. Prophets like Jeremiah and Isaiah warned them, yet they refused to listen. This serves as a lesson. Ignoring God's warnings leads to downfall, both for nations and individuals. The coming of Jesus Christ changed everything. He came to bring light to a dark world, offering salvation to those who believed in him. Yet even he was rejected by his own people. The Pharisees, like many today, were more concerned with power and tradition than the truth of God. The crucifixion of Christ is the ultimate moment of both tragedy and redemption. Betrayed by Judas, sentenced unjustly and nailed to the cross, he bore the weight of our sins, Matthew 27:32-50. But his resurrection on the third day proved that death had no power over him. His victory over sin and death offers hope to all who believe. After his ascension, the early church faced persecution, yet they spread the gospel fearlessly. This reminds us that true faith is not easy. It requires sacrifice, just as it did for the apostles who were martyred for their belief in Christ. Throughout history, God has used individuals to carry out his plans. From Moses to David, from Paul to modern-day preachers, he calls people to stand for righteousness. The question remains, are we answering his call or are we turning away? The Bible warns of an ultimate battle between good and evil. Revelation speaks of the Antichrist, the beast, and the final judgment. Many believe we are living in the end times, seeing signs such as war, deception, and moral decline. Matthew 24:6-14. The book of Revelation describes the return of Christ, who will defeat Satan and establish his kingdom. The new heaven and new earth will be a place without suffering, pain, or death. Revelation 21:1-4. This gives us hope in a world filled with uncertainty. But until that day comes, we must remain vigilant. Jesus warned that many would be deceived, following false teachings. In our modern age, with so many distractions, we must stay rooted in the truth of God's word. The ultimate question is, where do we stand? Do we walk the path of the righteous, or are we lost in the darkness? Each of us must choose. The Bible is filled with stories of warning and redemption, all pointing to one truth. God desires a relationship with us. He calls us to repentance and faith. As we reflect on these biblical mysteries, we must ask ourselves, what lessons are we applying to our lives today? Are we growing closer to God, or are we repeating the mistakes of the past? The time is short. Let us seek the Lord while he may be found, turning from sin and embracing his truth. For in him alone is eternal life.